It was a warm summer night in 2002, in a quiet Illinois suburb. Streetlights buzzed faintly as moths fluttered around them. Sprinklers sprayed across well-trimmed lawns, and kids reluctantly shuffled inside as their parents called out bedtime reminders. And down Maple Avenue, a 19-year-old girl named Kelsey Monroe walked with her backpack slung over one shoulder, humming softly to herself. She had just finished her shift at the diner where she worked part-time. Her sneakers slapped rhythmically against the pavement. Just another evening. Just another walk home. But what Kelsey didn't know was that this ordinary walk, barely a mile from her front door, would be her last. By the time the clock struck midnight, she would vanish. And for 12 years, no one would know where she was, until a forgotten locker in her old high school revealed the disturbing truth. Kelsey's parents, Diane and Robert Monroe, expected her home by 9:30 p.m. sharp. She was reliable, responsible, and always quick to call if anything delayed her. But as the minutes ticked past, Diane began pacing by the front window, staring down the street. By 10 p.m., Robert picked up the phone and called the diner. She left at 9:15, the manager confirmed. She said goodnight to everyone, smiling as always. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Police launched into action immediately. After all, it wasn't like Kelsey to disappear. She wasn't a rebellious teen. She wasn't mixed up in drugs or trouble. She was the kind of girl teachers adored and friends trusted. Witnesses offered conflicting fragments. One neighbor said she saw Kelsey walking past her house at 9:25, backpack bouncing against her side. Another vaguely remembered a dark sedan idling at the corner of Maple and 3rd, but couldn't recall the license plate, or even the exact make of the car. That was it. No signs of struggle. No discarded belongings. No footprints leading off into the woods. Just silence. For days, the town transformed into a desperate search grid. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder across fields, combing through ditches and wooded trails. Search dogs sniffed for a trail that ended abruptly by the roadside. Helicopters scanned from above. Flyers with Kelsey's smiling face, bright hazel eyes, brown hair pulled back, were taped to every lamppost, diner window and grocery store wall. The words "missing, please help" stared back at the community. Diane refused to sleep. She kept the porch light on each night, whispering prayers under her breath, so she can find her way back home. But days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The case grew cold. Detectives, overwhelmed with other investigations, quietly pushed Kelsey's file to the back of the shelf. It was the kind of haunting disappearance that left behind only questions, and a family trapped in an endless cycle of hope and heartbreak. Fast forward 12 long years. It was 2014, and Kelsey's case was nothing more than a faded memory in the files of the local police department. Her family still clung to hope, but deep down, even they began to wonder if they would ever truly know what happened. Then, by sheer chance, fate cracked the case wide open. The old high school Kelsey had once attended was undergoing renovations. Workers stripped away layers of drywall and plywood to expand storage space in the basement. As they tore down an old partition, they discovered a row of rusted metal lockers, forgotten for decades. Most were empty, just dust, cobwebs, and the smell of damp concrete. But locker number 119 was different. When a custodian pried it open, the stench hit him immediately. It was unmistakable, the thick, sour odor of decay. Inside was a worn black duffel bag. Shaking, the custodian unzipped it, only to drop it and stumble back in horror. Inside were skeletal remains, tangled with faded denim, a waitress apron embroidered with the local diner's logo, and strands of long brown hair. It was Kelsey. The news rocked the community like an earthquake. For over a decade, people had walked past that school, unaware that the answer to one of the town's greatest mysteries had been sitting in the basement all along. Kelsey's family was devastated. Her mother cried when police confirmed it. All these years, all these Christmases, birthdays, she was right here. Right here. Detectives immediately reopened the case. They combed through the old locker, searching for fingerprints, DNA, anything that might point to who had hidden her there. And then one name resurfaced, one that had been in the background in 2002, but never fully investigated. Howard Klein. Howard had been a custodian at the high school back in 2002. Middle-aged, quiet, often overlooked. But some teachers remembered whispers about how he lingered around the girls' locker rooms a little too often. Some students recalled how his eyes followed them just a bit too long in the hallways. Nothing had ever been proven. Nothing ever reported formally. But when police checked the old employment records, they found something chilling. Howard had suddenly resigned in 2003, just months after Kelsey's disappearance. He had moved 2 towns over, keeping to himself, working odd jobs. The fingerprints lifted from inside locker number 119 matched his. Even the faint initials scratched into the metal door, K+H, were traced back to his handwriting. Detectives brought Howard in for questioning. At first he denied everything. Said he'd never known Kelsey personally. Said the locker must have been tampered with. But the evidence stacked higher and higher. Forensics didn't lie. And eventually, the weight of 12 years of secrets crushed him. His confession was chilling. That night in 2002, Howard had seen Kelsey walking home. He offered her a ride. She refused at first, but he persisted. Whether he lured her in or forced her remains unclear, but he drove her to the school basement, where he had after-hours access. For 2 days she was trapped there. What exactly happened inside those walls may never be fully known. But by the end of that second night, Kelsey was gone. Panicked, Howard stuffed her into a duffel bag and locked her inside the old, forgotten locker. He told himself no one would ever look there. And for 12 years he was right. Howard Klein was arrested, charged with kidnapping and murder, and sentenced to life in prison without parole. At her memorial service in 2014, Diane Monroe wept openly, clutching a photograph of her daughter. For 12 years, I prayed my little girl was still alive, that maybe she was somewhere, waiting to come home. Now I know she never had that chance. And all because of one evil man who hid her in plain sight. The community was shaken. Parents struggled with guilt. Teachers wondered how many times they'd walked past that basement door, never realizing the darkness it concealed. Kelsey's story is more than just a true crime. It is a haunting reminder that sometimes, the most horrifying secrets are not buried deep in the woods or hidden in remote places. Sometimes, they are tucked away right where we least expect them, behind the locked door of a rusty metal locker in a school filled with laughter, innocence, and memories. For 12 years, the answer to her disappearance was closer than anyone ever imagined. And it makes you wonder, how many other forgotten corners, abandoned buildings, or locked doors still hold secrets, waiting for someone to finally open them?